It's called Advanced Answering Techniques. So it is three professional people explaining to other people how to answer different questions, a multiple variety of questions. Advanced Answering Techniques.
Hello and welcome to Advanced Answering Techniques. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Josh. We take listener questions and answer them using rigorous esoteric methods handed down to us from our fathers. No leather-backed tome holds these secrets. There's no paper trail. They're passed by breath to ear. Think like a virus that you get when someone coughs into your ear. You become infected with these methods. There is no known cure. One of the primary methods we learned is the art of inflexible pedantry. This is an important tool to discover truth that we use all the time. Our masters in the art of answering drilled this into our brains. One of their favorite aphorisms was, context and inference, what do we look like? It's quite a catchy little aphorism, isn't it? A proverb, if you will. We usually have two co-hosts, but sadly this week we don't have one of them. So I only have one to introduce. Gabe, your landlord goes around to various units in the building. You're aware of this. You see that he's asking everyone something. He's having sort of a short conversation with them. And then from that, you notice kind of about the tenor of the conversation, you see that the other renters seem somewhat befuddled by the discussion. What do you do? Are you curious enough to find out what he's talking to everyone about? Or do you figure out some way of escaping? If you escape, how do you do it?
So the landlord, I mean, this is like a nightmare.
I know.
Of mine.
I mean, it's
actually terrifying.
It's a nightmare of mine too. Interacting with landlords is the worst.
It's not my favorite thing to do. So I would probably avoid it at all costs. Yeah. And I would make an attempt to just slip out the side door. If he's in the main hallway in my place, the main entrance, then it should be pretty easy for me to slip out the side door. But maybe I will set up a trap or something like that.
Go on the offense.
Right, exactly. Just to, give myself as much time to get away as I can possibly have. I think. That's probably my course of action.
And he is going around. He's asking everybody if it's okay if he just camps in the yard for a while.
And honestly, I don't know my landlord.
Yeah.
But based on his choice of property management company.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me.
That he needs to.
That he's in a situation where he's like, I'm going to maximize the margins here, and I'm going to just make use of this. Nobody's using this yard, which is not true.
Right.
We use the yard.
Right.
But,
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if I saw that one day.
We, sadly, Caleb is not with us today, and we are hopeful that he'll be able to maybe submit something and that will drop in here, I guess. Or maybe somewhere else, but maybe it makes sense to drop it in here.
If it's about landlords, it would.
Maybe we should ask him to
do something about
landlords. Maybe that would make the most sense. Or maybe I could just ask him the question that I had.
There you go.
Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah, that might be the thing to do.
Caleb, you approach a friend of yours after church. Your intention is to invite the friend over during the week for a small get-together. Before you can do that, someone else slips into the conversation, and it's Gollum. Now you can't invite your friend over without involving Gollum. How do you handle this?
I guess I start off by saying, "Oh, hi, Gollum," because I want to be polite to Gollum, even though he's, some might say he doesn't deserve politeness. So I say, "Oh, hi, Gollum. I was just talking to my friend here about him coming over to my house to spend some time together And we were thinking we might weave elvish rope. Would you be interested in that, Colum? And he's not going to be. But then maybe he says something to the effect of he wouldn't want to weave the rope or touch it, but he'd still like to come and enjoy the snacks. And I'd say, oh, okay. Well, we were thinking we would eat lembas bread. And then I think the deal's done. He's not going to want to do that. And then what point is it for Gollum to come over if he's not going to do the activity or even have any of the snacks? So I think at that point he just kind of politely declines, or maybe impolitely declines. And then he goes over to the he leaves the conversation and gets a cup of coffee, and then he goes into a corner and sips his coffee as he looks on at all the other church members having their conversations. And I guess part of the risk of this is that now my friend is going to expect for those things to happen, and I don't know how to make elvish rope. I don't know how to make lembas. So just hopefully they're not too disappointed. I've always thought that anise bread is sort of like lembas bread. That's what I imagine lembas bread is like. And I think that paracord is sort of like elvish rope. So we're going to eat anise bread and make homemade paracord. Fun.
We are getting some comments on Spotify. Are you aware of this at all?
I don't have that information.
You don't have what I didn't tell you about that.
No,
comments.
no,
Okay.
that was just me saying that you hadn't told me yet. I don't have that information.
Very formal.
Well, I don't know. It's the dynamic is different.
It is different.
I wasn't gonna talk about it, but
Right.
it's unavoidable.
No,
so.
it's a different. It
feels. I guess I feel more like I'm in a deposition.
Yeah,
but there would be more people here probably if I was.
There would be at least a stenographer.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have obviously our lawyers present.
Present as always.
As we don't do anything.
No. Which might surprise people
here,
based on some of the things we've said and released to the public.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely we can't say that they're good lawyers. Sorry, guys.
No. Hey, sorry.
Listen.
You're the kind of lawyers that we can afford to retain to listen to us do a podcast.
You must have had to set your sights lower at some point. You probably went in thinking I'll be some sort of criminal defense lawyer or something like that, and then you end up in podcast law, which is, I'm gonna assume, pretty far down the ladder.
Down the ladder. I mean, there's at the top is God's law.
Yeah.
And then further down there's dog law. Podcast law has to be
actually lower than
much
dog
lower
law.
than dog law.
Yeah.
We've talked about dog law a little bit here and there, so
Yep.
I thought we might as well that's for the kind of the old school listeners, who've been with us for such a long time. Hey, where are you going to?
I was going to say big shout out to the old school listeners.
Big shout out to the old school listeners. Thank you so much for listening.
It's been awesome.
We're getting comments on Spotify.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying them. Here's the most recent one. This is from Julie. Julie has a rotful, ROTFL.
Rolling
emoji.
on the floor laughing.
I like that Caleb wants me to live in a prison barn with an ex-con cop killing pig. Yes.
I mean, that's one way to describe Wilbur. The protagonist of Charlotte's Web is another way.
Yeah.
So
That's true. It's, I mean, there you can choose kind of the facts that you're using to describe anybody.
Right.
You know, like that's so. Yeah, you can describe Wilbur that way. You could also describe him as a friend of sort of extra verbal spiders as well. That's legitimate.
Another way you could describe Michael Jackson as the king of pop. Or a total creep. King of the creeps.
It just depends on how you're going to choose to divide reality.
Yeah.
Okay?
Both can be true.
Yeah.
And both are applicable.
Yeah. So that apparently Julie likes to kind of focus on the shadows and the negatives.
Yeah. She wants to think about how Wilbur killed all those cops and not that he talks to Spider.
Not that he's friends with a spider.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much. Guys, feel free to drop any comments there on on Spotify. That's great. We're enjoying it so far. In the last several weeks, it's really just been Joy and Julie.
Yeah.
But
But we've been enjoying it.
We've been enjoying it. It's great. We love it. Let's get it going. Let's keep it
going. They've gotten it going.
They've gotten it going. It's rolling. It's a snowball. It's rolling down the hill.
Yes.
And let's keep that snowball rolling. Guys, jump in there. It's so much fun to have fun.
It takes a bunch of snowflakes to make an avalanche.
And if only we could get more snowflakes listening to this podcast.
Yeah. Well, the comments are snowflakes, not the commenters.
Right.
I just remember seeing that a lot after the term snowflake was popularized. That was a meme that I saw where people were like, we are snowflake. They were identifying as snowflakes, but saying it takes, it's a bunch of, what avalanches are made of, a bunch of snowflakes.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it that way. I thought of it like more kind of as, but really there's no denying it. That's just what it is.
Definitely a lot of snowflakes.
It was foolish of me to,
and it is powerful.
To overlook that. It is. So come on, snowflakes.
But again, to reiterate, it is fun to have fun.
Fun is fun. It's time that we get to our question. This is a question from, even though he doesn't introduce himself, this is Jim Rat. This is
Rat. Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is the Wet Lime Gang CEO.
Lime Gang CEO.
This is Steven. Let's listen in.
Hi, this is Steven. The other day we were taking a field trip, and part of the field trip was talking about an old wagon road that went down a hill, like a big hill. And it went through my head, how the heck do you stop a wagon going down a steep hill? Do they have brakes for that? I'm imagining in my head a wagon with nothing in front of it. And my wife very helpfully explained, no, there are horses on the front of the wagon, and they act as the brakes. I felt like a dummy. Do you guys ever feel like dummies because of history? Thanks.
Do we ever feel like dummies because of history?
Wow.
It's a big question. I identify with Steven having this question. I do like thinking of a wagon just kind of on it. Like apparently that was the vision that Steven had, was a wagon under its own steam.
Mm-hmm. Just
whatever power that might be.
Yeah, like maybe there's a brake that the driver engages.
Yeah.
That seems plausible.
And actually, I looked into it a little bit.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, and there were there were various kinds of. In fact, the first disc brake that was made to go on a wagon, because at a certain point, even if you have horses on the front of a wagon, if you have a large enough payload,
exactly,
you're still pushing the horses down the hill,
Yeah,
and it's a
yeah.
problem. So they had various contrived. One of them was a drag brake, which is just basically a huge.
Just like an anchor.
It's like an anchor you just throw off the back. I think it was like I think it was usually like,
Ship.
it's basically a land
They're
ship.
like, hey, this works pretty good in the water.
Why reinvent the anchor?
Right.
You know
Exactly.
You've
Slow
already
these
got it.
wagon wheels down. I just liked imagining somebody at that time going to the wagon dealership, asking about a wagon,
Kicking the tires.
and the salesman's like, "So you're gonna be on like you're gonna be going uphill, right? Mostly plains, but there's no downhill in this, or they can't guarantee
Right.
that you'll be safe
Yeah.
going downhill in a wagon.
Yeah.
It just seems fraught.
Yeah. Yeah. You do have to watch out for. I mean, they're not the most ethical of guys.
Wagon salesmen.
Wagon salesmen.
Yeah. There's a lot of people have failed out of other professions.
Right.
There.
That's where
you
they
know?
end up, and they're doing whatever they can to
Right.
keep their head above water.
They didn't even have podcast law to fall back on.
That's right.
They just flunked all the way out.
All the way out, you end up selling used wagons.
Yeah.
It's when you're selling used wagons, sometimes you don't even mention kind of the horses.
Yeah, that's true.
That are involved. You're just getting people to focus on the wagon. Maybe that's some of what Stephen was. They'll sell you a wagon sort of as a downhill.
Right.
A downhill wagon.
Yeah.
No, this wagon doesn't even need horses.
Right.
It's a downhill wagon. You gotta watch out.
You got to watch out. They're not. They won't. They'll tell you if you ask them.
Right.
If the horses are included.
Absolutely.
But they're not going to mention it up front.
They're not going to mention up front. This comes without horses.
Might dissuade you from. I don't know what did a wagon cost? $100.
I mean, I think
Is that even high?
That has to be. I mean, who knows how long has
I'm thinking like 1870.
1870?
Like $50.
Yeah.
See, here's a situation we might be experiencing right now where I feel a little bit like a dummy.
That's history.
With
for
history.
you. That's history for you. To make you
know?
feel stupid. Yeah. At what point, like, what is, I don't even have any way of gauging what $100 could have got you in terms of worldly goods in 1870. I mean, probably less than it could have gotten you before that. The economy's been destroyed by a civil war.
That's true, yeah. Well, no, but the war is good for the economy, right?
That-
But I guess it's different if it's civil war because everyone that could do anything really is dying.
There were certain like other social factors that I
guess
think
that's true.
undermined the economy as well. Not that the economy is the
Right.
most important part of a country necessarily. But
yeah, we did kind of take a hit
but
when
it
we
was a hit.
started requiring that, the workforce be paid. That does eat into the margins a
certain
little bit.
sacrifices. It is easy to look back. So that's interesting. It does make you feel like a dummy to think about the money, but then to think about a society that is profiting off of the unpaid labor of hundreds, thousands of people.
Right.
That makes you feel less like a dummy when you look at that part of history.
Exactly. You kind of feel a little smarter
Feel pretty smart.
about what you know about people that they didn't. What we hold to be self-evident that they didn't.
in various ways.
That's true.
So
I feel like a smarty.
I feel right now, I'm having a harder and harder time identifying with what Stephen was saying because I'm feeling smart.
It's true. And Stephen, even in your experience that you shared here, you were driving in the car.
Yeah.
And I mean, none of those idiots knew how to do that.
None of
so
them.
that's pretty good.
Yep. None of the used wagon salesmen couldn't do it.
Nope.
The slave owners couldn't do it, and Lord knows the slaves couldn't.
Right. I mean, nobody could.
Nobody
because
could.
the cars didn't
but
exist.
especially not slaves.
even if it, I mean, they would be, if it were possible, then it would probably still be very difficult for them to
for
do
that,
it.
or unless I don't know, maybe in certain societies they would be doing even more of it. Maybe
It's true.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay,
Maybe I'm wrong.
okay,
I'll take that back.
We're back to dummy.
We're back to dummy. I was wrong. I looked at a situation. I didn't think it through.
No.
They're going to be the primary drivers in that society.
But I think I can say yes to the question, that I do feel like a dummy when I think about history sometimes. Even on this podcast, we had a run where we were talking about presidents, the early presidents. I mean, pick any era of presidents, and I'm going to have a hard time.
I'm going to have a really hard time.
But like we were struggling with like number 2 and 3.
That was how quickly
it
was embarrassing. I don't even want to try to say which it was.
No, I can't even remember
because I don't think I can remember. I have an approximate idea, but I don't want to have to do corrections next week. So it's important to not.
And certainly not about something that we were already wrong about and previously corrected.
I believe at a certain point our listenership is going to have real trouble with that.
I think
listening to us recorrect ourselves about the presidents, which we just can't get through our thick skulls. I don't even have a favorite president. People have favorite presidents. I don't think I have one. Do you have one?
I mean, I guess if I had to pick just one,
right? You're gonna make me pick
only
just
pick
one.
I don't know. You know, I got a soft spot for numero uno.
Oh yeah,
the top of the pile, George Washington. You know, that's we grew up in the area where those battles were fought.
Right.
You get a certain appreciation walking around, seeing all the colonial and Revolutionary War history in southeastern Pennsylvania. You learn a little bit about the man, and then you grow up and you learn a little bit more, and you kind of are like, okay, sounds like an interesting fella. But I guess I'd have to say it's George Washington.
George Washington. And if I had to go, you gun to my head, I've got to pick a favorite president. Just one. Only one. I'm tempted to go a little more recent.
Okay.
I'm tempted to go a little more recent than...
I can see it. I know who it is.
I mean, real recent.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if I can only pick one, I mean, it's got to be George Washington. It's got to be
George Washington.
He's the best president.
You really can't look past him.
No, if I could, I have pretty firm ideas, not because of the Civil War, about Abraham Lincoln. I'm not into Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
I think he was a real problem.
Okay.
That's
I mean, this is not the standard, this is not the narrative that we get on Lincoln.
I know. And I'm not too knowledgeable about it, but I just my thing is really, it's mostly just based on kind of facial hair and hat, and I don't like it.
Totally. Yeah.
And so I don't really know the various ways that he undermined a republic.
Yeah.
That's less of a concern for me than just kind of the aesthetics, the way he presented himself.
Yeah.
And
so you prefer, rather than looking at him as the emancipator, you think he's just fugly.
He's a straight up uggo.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to. It's embarrassing to kind of look back through all these beautiful presidents.
So many presidents.
Many hotties. These straight up baddies.
It's not an actual requirement for the office.
Right.
But it is implied that you have to be basically like a total beefcake.
You've got to be a beefcake. We're talking high sevens.
Oh,
and up.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's where, like, okay, the margin of like, accounting for taste.
Yes.
That's plus or minus 1. Right. But I would definitely say, if you want to be in there with a good shot at the presidency, you got to be 8+.
Yeah.
For sure.
Definitely.
Like, I'm saying like West Coast, like Miami even.
Right.
I know Miami's not on the West Coast.
It's not on the West Coast,
but
if
like a Miami 8.
a Miami 8,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about across the board.
Yeah.
That's when you look at those portraits, and there's just a couple that dip below that.
Yeah.
And Lincoln is probably the biggest outlier.
Well, and it's so tricky because it's like Al Gore, he was, all of his polling numbers, people were saying, oh, they were telling him he's an 8, but they didn't dig in far enough.
Right.
He's a Scottsdale 8. Yeah,
right.
Like, that's like a 6.5.
It's a regional 8. Once you get it,
right.
Once you're talking nationwide, yes, that's a 6.5. If you put that on a Miami scale, we're down in the 4 range.
Exactly. It is like, these are the things that people do not pay close enough attention to.
Its context is everything. I know at the beginning we said that we had these sort of fathers that handed these techniques down to us and said, and it sounded like they weren't interested in context or inference. Right. But actually,
it is everything.
It is everything, as we've said before. It's really important.
It's key.
It is the key to understanding anything. And that is just to kind of circle back to dig in on Stephen's question a little bit. This is the problem of history. Stephen Dedalus in Joyce's Ulysses says that history is a nightmare from which he's trying to awake. And
been there, brother.
Were you?
No. Well, I mean, that's kind of what it feels like when you feel like a dummy.
When you feel like a dummy, in the midst of history. No. But that to me is that's exactly what this feels like. Yeah. There's a nightmare here, and it's a real, I would say, epistemological problem. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid. I think our listeners can follow us if we use a word like epistemological.
And I don't, but we just have different views.
We have different perspectives. Yeah. We have different sort of kind of perceptions of our ontological position with respect to our listeners.
I'm gonna say that's gonna lose them, Josh. You're losing them.
I'm trying to just kind of create the metaphysical underpinnings of a coherent conversation.
And when they hear that, the audience, I think a lot of them are saying, "What's that $5 word?" Like they're really just like, I don't know if you remember the previous question.
The previous question was
about one of our listeners who's going to live in a barn.
Right. Some of our listeners are living in barns.
I don't. And when you get the context for that,
right.
It makes a lot of sense. It's convenient. It's expedient to do. Absolutely. To live in the barn. But that just might be an indication, is all.
Yeah, that's true.
Is all I'm saying.
Is all I'm saying is some of these barn dwellers, probably a good 10% of our listenership.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful.
And honestly, hopefully when they're in the barn, they're playing it for the animals, and somehow the podcast apps will register that as more listens.
More ears.
I don't know. What's the animal with most ears?
I mean,
they pretty much all just have 2.
They just have 2. That's pretty standard. I guess if you're looking for quantity, I would want there to be mules.
Okay.
Like I don't mean quantity of ears. I mean like
size.
Like size.
Area.
Overall ear surface area. I that's what I'd want. But that problem of how here I am. I wake up one day, as we all do. We wake up in the middle of history. Mm. We become conscious in the middle of this soup. And then to try to understand where you are requires you to understand what has been. But your access to what has been is a problem. Understanding what has been, even in the even just in the recent past, is difficult. Then you extend that back further and further, and that's a real tough situation to find yourself in. And every human being lives in that situation. It's kind of astounding. So yes, Stephen, history does make me feel like a dummy because there's there's so much of it, and I don't know really any of it.
Yeah.
But within that, there's something kind of interesting if you dig into small areas of history. Every once in a while, you'll find your perception of a certain situation starts to open up, and you start to be able to imagine the way that people, the actual different way that people were thinking, different ways of approaching problems and their lives and all that. And you suddenly get a very different perspective on a one capsule of human life. That's actually when history makes me feel, I don't know if it makes me feel like a smarty.
No.
It doesn't make me feel like a smarty. It makes me feel like a dummy, but I feel like a dummy awash in the wonder of another time.
And you can just almost reach out and touch it. It's like
right there.
Real. It's in front of your face. We all have moments like that where we
Yes.
think about, what a villager
Right.
in medieval England
Right.
experienced. And what was it like? What was it like to walk a mile in their shoes or shoe
or whatever
equivalents?
they were
Their
strapping
tights.
to their Do you think they did a lot of that, which was just they were clearly wearing tights?
Yeah, I
these-
mean, right? Weren't they, or is that just a movies thing? Again,
No, these guys. Who knows?
knows?
Who knows? We don't even know.
Yeah.
But let's say that they were wearing tights, and that then they just go out and walk around in tights, all covering the bottom of their feet. How long
with
with
to
no
just
shoes?
tights, no,
No
shoes.
shoes.
Yeah.
just wearing tights?
How long until they get holes?
They
in
get
them?
holes through them.
They're
Just
gonna wear
right through
holes, and those are the questions when you start to consider. I mean, I can't say. I know that I've worn tights for costumes
Sure.
at some point,
Yes.
but I don't think I've ever worn tights long enough to wear a hole in them.
No.
So I guess next time history makes you feel like a dummy, just slap on a pair of tights, go for a nice long walk.
Then you'll know
Yeah,
immediately.
yeah.
How long it's kind of the question that the owl in the Tootsie Pop was asking.
The
How
Tootsie
many,
Pop, the
how-
owl in the Tootsie
the
Pop.
owl in the Tootsie Pop commercial.
Oh, okay.
Remember him?
Yeah, I do.
He's saying, you go to the wise owl with your Tootsie
Mhm.
Pop and you say, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
Yeah,
And so, that you really do feel like that owl when you're asking asking this question. But now you'll be the owl and you'll be able to answer
yes.
how many steps.
How many steps it takes to wear holes in your forest green tights?
Yes. Over which you're wearing your leather jerkin.
A leather jerkin. And like a I don't know, color block,
Mhm.
with like a split down the middle vertically and
Middle.
horizontally.
Two different
Two different
colors.
colors.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like checkered, but not
It's
really. It's
kinda
big
checkered.
checkers.
Yeah.
But
You're-
yeah, like you. That's what you look
You're
like.
wearing that. You've got you have a tight fitting leather coif on your head.
Okay, and
That's
that's
a
like
medieval hat.
but it's kind of like it goes over your whole head and neck and onto your shoulders, or no?
That's a snood, I
A
believe.
snood. Oh, okay.
I think that's a snood, but that you're wearing that too.
Okay. You're coiffed up. You're snooded.
You're perfectly snooded for this weather.
That's the real. I think that's the medieval dream. So that might not even be a good thing to imagine because that might not have been the experience of very many
people.
villagers. A lot of them were choosing between a coif and a snood.
Or they had to. That's
know.
just their financial
Right.
straits.
There's like one snood for the whole family.
Right.
It's the family snood.
and you have your in some of these large medieval families, your one day of the month that
Yep.
you get to wear the snood.
And that's when you're scheduling your hottest dates with the, I don't know, bar wench.
yes, the town tart.
See, this is what you get into. If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
this is what you get into when you start to really consider history in this way. Also, I will say, how did your wife know so fast? Is she a time traveler?
That is something that we all have to kind of confront.
Yeah.
Are we in an intimate relationship with a time traveler? Can we trust them?
Yes. And honestly, if she's not a time traveler,
right,
it could be a vampire because of how long they live.
Thanks so much for listening to Advanced Answering Techniques. This has been a slightly different kind of episode. We were sadly lacking Caleb, and we would love to treat your questions this way next time with Caleb, if you'll only send them to us. We're looking for a voice memo, some kind of audio file about a minute in length. So send those questions in. You can send them to advancedansweringtechniques@gmail.com. Gabe, anything else that we need to deal with right here at the end?
Yes. Both Caleb and Josh have Substacks that you should check out. Go subscribe to them.
Yes.
And you go to, for Caleb's, you go to cgrahams.substack.com. That's cgrahams.substack.com.
Yes.
And then click subscribe. And then when it asks you, do you want to pledge money? That's just, you can just say, hey, if you ever decided to make me pay for this, I would do that.
I'll do it.
I would be a good little boy and pay the $5 a month, $10, $200, $400, $800 a month.
You can really throw some money around, but it's all just kind of fake play Monopoly money.
Right. So you could say, if you wanted to make me pay for this, I will.
Yeah.
And so you could consider doing that.
Yeah.
Josh has a paid level of his
And people
Substack,
are really getting their money's
which is
worth.
sturvenson.substack.com. That's like Stevenson, but with an R in there. And they're both really great, and you guys should listen to them. I didn't write a poem this week.
But Gabe did volunteer to just improvise.
I did. Yeah, I was going to volunteer a poem. Improvise. I volunteered to improvise a poem. And
it's so brave of him to do it. And I think he said he was going to work something in about a medieval bodkin.
Okay, a bodkin. And
do you remember what a bodkin is?
A bodkin. I'm getting stuck on bodice. Okay, a bodkin is so it covers your groin. Your crotch?
That would be a codpiece.
A codpiece.
Yeah.
Okay, but like a jerkin is like a tunic?
I think so. I think so. It might just be a vest. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. But a bodkin is a vestment of some kind.
Some kind of vestment.
Okay. Clickety clack. Go my keyboard caps, and then I click on the this is not working.
I love where you're going. I love the onomatopoeia right off the bat.
Clickety clack.
It's so strong. Clickety clack.
My keyboard caps. When on my phone, I search for the Substack app. There I find two pals of mine who every day asterisk
not exactly every day
leave fine writings for me to I can't remember what the previous line was that I should be rhyming with.
Find writings for me to read
at an incredibly slow speed, not only because of my learning disability, but only because, or no, not only because of my disability, but also because I need their writing to last as long as I can make it last. And the end. Oh, and it didn't do anything about the bodkin.
Yes.
But that's okay.
That's
That'll be
okay.
the end of the poem for this week.
In many ways, I feel like the bodkin is sort of behind you. I feel like you can feel the influence of the bodkin.
Yeah. It's
behind the poem.
Acting as like a structure, like a structural element to the whole poem.
That poem is in many ways bodkin haunted, I would say.
Like the Middle Ages themselves.
Bye.
Bye.